G'day, guys. Welcome back to Supercoach with DR and welcome to another season team preview. Now, this is a very special one for me. Now, I don't want to embarrass this great man, but you will be all very, very familiar with who he is. He is one of the three members of, let's be honest, the best Supercoach content creating group out there. And I've been being asked the question, who would you invite round to dinner if you can invite three people? And it's Pistol, Chizo, and this man on the screen, JB. So, JB from Dr. Supercoach, welcome to the channel, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. How you been, legend?
Yeah, good, mate. I appreciate you inviting me on. And, you talk about the OGs and people that have been at this for a very long time. And I don't think, in terms of at least having a social media presence, I don't think we've been at it too much longer than you. You've been on Twitter, obviously, a very long time as well. So spreading the Lord's word of Supercoach advice. So, no, same goes to you, man. Honoured to be here. And I tell people that I want to have dinner with you in my top three. I usually go for celebrities and stuff like that. But no, very, very honoured to be here. Very honoured.
Oh, good on you, mate. As I said, much appreciated. And for many people, mate, they may not know that you've actually been doing a fair bit of stuff on YouTube lately. We're talking a little bit pre-podcast. Very, very, very close to the 2K subscriber mark. So by the end of this video, we want to get JB there. Currently, what is it, mate? 1.99K?
It says 1.99. I don't know how that works, but essentially we are very close to 2K. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to leech off of your subscribers, mate. So everyone jump over.
Hey, absolutely. And look, it's Supercoach with DR, and often people think the DR's doctor, like I've gone the old Aldi version of Dr. Supercoach, but it's not like that, mate. It's more the initials there. So
yeah. No, I get you. I do the same as JB, DR, initials recognize initials.
Exactly right, mate. Absolutely love it, mate. But look, I'll tell you what, we're going to do things a little bit differently with this one. We're actually going to get, as you can see on the screen, the scores from the latest preseason match. And it was obviously Port against the Dockers. Now, you're obviously a Port man over there in SA, mate. And I think there's a lot of relevant players this year. And there was a lot of news coming out of this preseason game. Some people scared off some players, some people jumping on some of those mid-price type players. So there's a fair bit happening, mate, and there's no one else better to talk to about these boys. So do you know what, mate? I was going to start right at the top of the list, but I'm going closer to the bottom for this one because this is a massive talking point, and it's Zack Butters, a very highly owned player in the preseason. I think that ownership's gone down a little bit, particularly in the last week. But we all know what happened. So a bit of an ankle tweak early on. Kenny, very, very precautious with this man. And why wouldn't you be? He's an absolute elite superstar, super breakout year from him last year. But only the 9% time on ground, 8 Supercoach points. Mate, should we be scared off by this? Or is this simply something not to worry about and it's full steam ahead with the Zacky Butters pick?
I was at this game, and I did see him sort of get that lame jog off the field, and I was very worried that it was something that was potentially going to keep him out. And he hasn't left my team all preseason. And spoilers alert, he still hasn't left my team.
Beautiful.
But the foot that he didn't have the weight going through is what rolled, which I think is the first great sign of it might just be precautionary. If you had rolled the one that all the weight was on, then you can imagine maybe there's something a little bit more serious or sinister at play there. So that's the first box that he ticked. Secondly, preseason game, they said afterwards if it were a season proper that he would have played through. So that's the second tick there. And a lot of people, I think, are calling out the fact that he started in the forward pocket. Again, practice match. I think Rozee started, pretty much 1 out, 4 forward in the first practice. So no concerns about any of those things. Hasn't left my side. I went to the Port Club tonight and had dinner with a great man. Not with him. He was sitting over there after just signing one of my Guernseys. But I did happen to slip it in there and just ask how the ankle was going, and he said he'd pulled up much better than he anticipated and was feeling good for round 1. So I have zero concerns for Zack. Zero.
That is music to my ears, mate. And after this, watch that ownership absolutely start to skyrocket again off the back of that, actually. Because
I should have talked him down.
Well, look, it's a big talking point because there are a lot of players around that price mark. I'm looking at the LDU types, the Sarong types as well. So there's a fair bit of competition for that spot in our teams, mate. But I think off the back of that, I'm a lot more confident. And the man will stay in, I think, because what a player he is. We might
One
now,
last
mate.
thing.
Oh,
I was going
sorry.
to just
Yes,
say
yes.
as well, for those who think he might get eased in, last season he was sort of eased in. He was a little bit lame the preseason at times. And we didn't start the season well at all. And it was until he got those CBAs that Port actually started ticking as a team in as a whole unit. So I think Ken Hinckley understands that his job might actually be on Zack Butters' shoulders at times. I can't see him getting eased in at all either. So I think we know we need him in there. We can't start poorly. We've got a bit of an easy draw. So I think we'll see the magic happen. Sorry to jump in there, mate.
No, mate. Please jump in anytime because, again, some great info. And another point to that, mate, is the fact that there's possibly some even value built into this pick, given the fact that he did have that slow start. We know what he did, particularly, post-buy. So that is a really good point to bring up. When we're looking at little bits of value, where can we find some value, even with our premium type picks? That could be something we could keep into account as well, mate. So much appreciated. That is some fantastic info there, mate, on Zachary. We will go up to the top now, mate. Ollie Wines, I think he's the other big talking point here because 130 Supercoach points, if you don't mind, 27 touches, 12 of those contested, hit the scoreboard. Mate, what is with this pick? Now, is it a matter of people are getting sucked in because it's a false economy without Zack Butters having any game time in this side? Or do you think that there's a realistic world where Ollie Wines can actually be a successful pick for us this year, but he really keen to hear your thoughts on the former Brownlow medalist?
I think it's realistic that he could. And with the buy that he has and the opening run of games that Port have, especially we're a bit friendlier on the home games in the first half of the season. You'll see players like Houston as well, not to jump ahead, but players that do particularly well at Adelaide Oval are going to have better starts to the season than they will finishes to the season. I think Ollie will be one of those. Whether that means he's successful at that price or not, you look back to his Brownlow year. It's not like he was knocking us down with his 120 plus averages or anything like that. He still did have sections of that season where he went I think it was like 118 for a strong section, 120 for a strong section. He would just also have lame parts of the season as well. So if you think you're buying into his better half of the season being his first half, for the price that he is, I think he can offer points and value, but he's not going to be someone that you keep for the entire season either. The big tick for me, I know a lot of people look at the disposals and even getting a goal from the midfield. Prime Ollie Wines is kicking a goal every few games. They're getting 4 marks, showing that he's spreading the ground. He's getting the cheap ball around the ground as well. He can't just be one pace. He can't rely on those touches just at the CBAs or the stoppages. He needs to be getting cheapies around the ground, which he was kind of showing this week, or last week when the game was, last Friday. That is the biggest tick for me. That makes me think that maybe he's ready to go back to his 105 to 110 average, but don't expect the 115 or don't expect anything crazy from him.
Excellent. Well, there are lots of ticks there, and as you mentioned, got a really nice buy. We know that the potential's there, so I'll tell you what, he's definitely on my watch list. But again, we've got a lot of competition, don't we? You could sort of talk about the Martins, the Amon types, if you're going to go there looking for that DPP nice and early on. So I think in other years, maybe if we didn't have some other really decent options up our sleeve, then he may be more of an obvious selection for me. But I'm still on the fence with him, mate. I'm just worried that it's fool's gold. But yeah, without that real premium scoring history, and when we think about a fall in premium, I talk about those guys that have had that 120 plus season averages. He's really not that type of bloke, is he? But within his own right, he has averaged well enough before to say that he could be good value. But totally agree, mate. Not a keeper. Certainly looking to upgrade him at some stage.
Absolutely. Yep.
Beautiful, mate. All right. So the next man under him, I'm pretty sure that his ownership started to rise off the back of that Zack Butters injury, and it's Conor Rozee. So I made a call a couple of years ago that he'd be top 3 on talent in the competition, this bloke. I just love everything about him. Obviously, leader of the club now, but 113 points for him, 17 kicks, 9 handballs. I won't read everything out because people can see that on the screen, but really impressed with that tackle count. So 7 tackles, not afraid to get his hands dirty there. 65% efficiency, so possibly some more meat on the bone there, mate. But I don't know if, and you could maybe correct me here, if it's viable to even go a Butters and a Rozee, or whether or not you've just got to pick one of the two. What do you think the real positives to the Conor Rozee pick are, mate? And what do you think at the same time some of the potential downfalls could be to selecting him at this price?
I do think it's viable to go two. If you think of classic buy rounds and how many players you're likely missing out, premiums you're likely missing out on, usually you're looking at least 4, 5, or 6. And I think you'd be hard pressed to stack your team with that many Port and Fremantle players. So I think no matter what, with Port and Fremantle players, you're not going to overdo that buy unless you're going well over the top, to which you're picking premiums that aren't really even premiums because there just aren't that many between the two teams. So I think it's definitely viable to start him as well. The things I look at on this score sheet, 73% time on ground, I think that'll go up a little bit throughout the season. I think a lot of players you look down the list here were managed a little bit in game, as much as it was a full hit out. It was definitely a warm day in Adelaide, and as you can tell by the score, it wasn't particularly contested or close game. So if you think there's a little bit of meat on the bone there, I tend to agree. The thing with Rozee is last year, he sort of, for some reason, lost his ceiling and he just became Mr. Consistent. But if you think about Rozee the year before, when he started getting that midfield time, the reason that we started him all last year is because he finished the season with huge scores, like against Adelaide he dominated, against West Coast he dominated. And that, off the top of my head, he had some big 130 plus, even 140 plus scores. And we're thinking, well, if he's got that upside, he could price you out. And then he just sort of stayed consistent all season. If you can bring that ceiling back, then you could see a whole different beast. You could see someone pushing 118 plus with that. So I think he's definitely capable. Downsides are just that he just hovers around this price. He could do it all year. If he only goes to about 120 as his best, but doesn't really go below 105, you just see those players hover all year. Eventually they'll drop to 580k at some point and you can just pick it up cheaper. So he could be a not particularly inspiring pick, or he could go crazy. It depends how you feel about him.
Love it, mate. Yeah, look, the talent is absolutely undeniable. I suppose the next question I've got for you, mate, when it comes to that Port midfield and that Port CBA rotation, you've got your Wines, Rozee, Butters, obviously your Horne-Francis, your Willem Drew as well. When it comes to the CBA chunk, and I know this may be very difficult, but could you possibly give us a rating from maybe 1 to 5 with those players? Who you think is going to be looking at the most CBA time? Down to those blokes that are really going to be possibly on the fringe?
That is difficult. Sorry. I think you're probably looking at number 1 being Zack. I know he can do well up forward, but when he's doing well up forward, it's usually in a forward to get to stoppages type of role anyway. Whereas Rozee can be a leading marking forward. So I'd say 1 would have to be Zack. 2 is probably Ollie. Just again, doesn't really have a second role, but I think we'll see him float forward a lot more this year as well. 3, you're looking at Rozee, and then I think a bit of a gap before we start looking at Drew and Horne-Francis. What I sort of predict for these guys is, I know we saw Burgoyne get the wing role a lot in this preseason, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. I get the feeling he's not going to be in the best 22, but instead we're going to have a Drew or a Horne-Francis sort of on the outside on the wing, push into the stoppage, which I don't love from us. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But it's something that we saw last year with Ollie, which is why he had such a bad season, is because a lot of his minutes were pumped into that wing role when he was a bit injured. So it just doesn't suit him. I don't think it suits Drew either. But I just don't know what else we do there. And every predicted 22 from Port is sort of coming with that sort of similar outlook. So it can be tough to predict the 4 in the middle, the 3 in the middle, and how many rotations they will get. But I just think you're going to see Conor and Butters around the ball a lot. you're going to see Ollie around the ball a lot. But Conor and Ollie, I think, can be serviceable forward, whereas Butters, I think he's going to go between on the ball and on the bench a bit more.
Excellent, mate. And I suppose all in their own right can do a little bit of damage up forward, or albeit in different ways as well. You look at Rozee up forward; he's always so dangerous. He'll get the best defender lots of the time. So yeah, very, very interesting, and again, very hard to predict, but much appreciated, mate. And yeah, I think that's what lots of people are assuming. Butters is at number one simply because of talent's there. We saw what he did last year when we know how much Kenny loves him, mate. The next bloke, we're talking going a little bit down the chain here, price-wise in Supercoach, but it's Jackson Mead, mate. So 112 Supercoach points off 21 touches, 8 marks, 8 of those contested. Look at that efficiency, 95% efficiency. Now, this is a bloke who I've seen in a couple of random teams here and there. They've raided his pre-season. They've been pretty happy with his last 2 performances, and even in the practice match before that. Does this man have any sort of relevance in Supercoach this year, or do you think there are just too many other options, either just above or below the price, for us to be seriously considering Mead in our sides, mate?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's hard to say on Mead because he's sort of been pushing for a couple of years now, and he's good, but he's good in the midfield. He has played forward before, and there's a reason he's 200k, not 120k, because he got games last year and he just didn't score well. Didn't even score well enough to get to the 300k mark, which is I think is around 60, or even a little bit less. So I think he's sort of going to be in and around the power pepper role, not replacing Butters like we saw during this practice match. If he did push into CBAs, you'd have to convince me of someone else who's missing out. And of the list of Ollie, Conor, Zack, Horne-Francis, and Drew, I don't know who he suddenly jumped. I'd highly doubt it's any of them. So I would go towards the Windsors, who we know has got a locked-in wing role. I would go towards the Lazaros, who sort of has a high half forward, get to stoppages role. I would go to them before Mead. You could convince me that in 4 weeks' time, when Power Pepper comes back, Mead won't ever be in the team. Maybe as a sub, but maybe not at all. So, yeah, I'm not touching Mead, but I really hope it's his breakout year because I just like the kid. But, yeah, not for Supercoach.
Beautiful, mate. Thank you very much for clearing that up for some people. Now, the next man, he's been in and out of my side, JV.
Right.
I love the pick. He's burned me before in the past. I've come back, fallen in love with him. It's Dan Houston, mate, 109 points, 26 touches. I'm not going to go through all the stats there, but I'll tell you why I like him, mate, because obviously you look at that run that you've got early on. I think it's 7 out of the first 10 games. And look at his average at Adelaide Oval, and it's pretty magnificent. And he seems to be one of those blokes, and we know what Supercoach loves, those blokes that step up in clutch moments, really important times in games. And I don't know if it's just me as an outsider, but it just seems like this bloke always tends to pop up. We know about his goal that he's kicked and all the rest, but seems to be really damaging at the right times for Supercoach. Now, on the weekend, mate, I believe that he didn't have many kick-ins whatsoever. So I thought, well, there's some bonus points gone there, but he's still getting 26 touches here. Loves to use the ball by foot, can be super damaging as well. So I'm finding it hard to get a read on where he's going to fit within that top 6 to 8 averages. Now, I must admit, I did have him over Dacos, saving that 50k. Wasn't stoked with Dacos the start to the season, but I've made a few changes there. He's in and out, JB. Can you convince me either way, mate? Or are you someone that's also on the fence about the Dan Houston pick? Has he entered your side during the preseason at all, mate?
I don't think he's left my side in year 2024. He didn't start in my side when I was tinkering, but he hasn't left in a long time. His ownership is like 5% or something, could be potentially even lower at the moment. Look, I just think his role is so unique in the league that even when there's a stoppage at, we'll say just outside the centre circle, but still in the centre square, he is already up at that contest as the release guy. So as soon as Ollie gets the ball, it's out into space. Dan Houston's the deliverer. The amount that we look to get him the ball to distribute by foot, of those 26 touches, 20 of them were kicks. and it's going to be that ratio all season long. He is the distributor of halfback. I wish he would get the kick-ins, but he, for some reason, doesn't. Trent McKenzie and Ryan Burton pretty much shared them last year. I thought Birdo might be on the outer this year, but it seems like he's still there and about. Had a good game himself, took a lot of kick-ins. But if he does eventually get them, if Burton's dropped, I can't see why he's not next in line. It is an interesting point, but I don't think he even really needs them. He's so damaging by foot.
Yeah.
And we just seek him out from 20, 30, 40 meters away. We're seeking him out on the switch, everything. So we've spoken about a lot about this run. So it's Port play West Coast at Adelaide Oval round 1. We play Richmond away round 2, and historically he loves 2 teams in the league, and Richmond is one of them. We play Melbourne at home and then Essendon at home. Historically, Essendon is that other team. Then Fremantle at home, Collingwood away, St Kilda at home, Adelaide at home, although it's an away game. That's of the first 8 games. He leaves the state twice, and twice to the MCG. So I just think if you're going to have him, either you're paying $6.20 at round 8 for probably a lamer second half of the season when we travel a bit more, or you're paying $5.90 now, and you're probably getting most of his best scores of the season early.
Very high praise, and it's that role, and it's what you mentioned there. It's such a unique role, isn't it? Because I'm trying to put my finger on exactly what the role is. Obviously, he loves to distribute off halfback. They want the ball in his hands. But I was thinking, with no kick-ins, how has he got these 26 touches? It was pretty unassuming for me. So, big fan of the selection. And that's another thing that we always do need to take into account, mate. What sort of run do these players have early on the season, pre-buy, post-buy? We've got to take all these things into account, because there's very small margins between players these days, isn't there, mate? When we're talking premium defenders, good luck picking a top 8 for averages this year with some of the blokes that may be getting back there, like your Martins with that DPP. But I like the fact also about that ownership that you mentioned, around the 5% mark. And to be confident with a player like that, with a really decent ceiling as well. We've seen that huge ceiling over the years, haven't we, as well, mate? When he's on, he is absolutely on. So if you think the run's good early, jump on, I think, and very realistic starting pick, mate. So you've got me very much back in love with Dan Houston. As I said, I was on the fence. Now I've just jumped in that tub, the love heart shaped tub in the old dodgy hotel there, mate.
Absolutely.
So beautiful, JV. Love it, mate. Now, Horn Francis, I don't think is going to be super relevant, mate. Anything to his 105 that's worth talking about?
I like him for draft. I think he could break out a lot in the draft format. If you have someone disrespecting him in a keeper after back-to-back 60s at some point, definitely hunt them in that sort of sense, but not for classic. If he was forward, I feel like we've been robbed of a forward JHF. If he was forward, he'd be the most fun player to start. And just sort of watch him cook and watch him get better, but he's not. So absolutely, I'd be ignoring him in classic.
Beautiful, mate. And funny you say that. I'm actually in, and we're still doing it. You got like 24 hours at pick with this one, but it's a keeper elites league, and I just got him at pick 5 with my 5th pick. So I thought that's not bad for a keeper, Horn Francis.
No,
so pretty happy, mate. So good to hear that he's should hopefully be a decent draft selection for us. Now I'm going to skip Farrell. Burton, I don't think is going to be super relevant. Talked a bit about Drew. Trav Boak, geez, he's been a warrior, hasn't he, mate? Probably my favourite Port Adelaide player. Thought back in the day, big possibility he'd head down to Geelong, but he stayed loyal, and what a warrior he is. Super respect for this man, and I'm sure he's massive in Adelaide, but if he played for a big Victorian club, this bloke's name would just be in the lights so much more than what it is. But
I think the same obviously... I think the same with Robbie Gray as well. Port fans, Robbie Gray, Travis Boak is our best captain ever, not just for his on-field play, but what he did off-field, turning down Geelong, captaining the club through our worst years, and then coming out the other end, definitely deserves a flag. Robbie Gray obviously had all the talent side of things as well. But trust me, they couldn't be more respected down here. But I agree, the Victorian sort of side of things hasn't caught up enough. But I think Robbie Gray's I think he's universally liked. But for how good he was, he should be up there.
Absolutely agree, mate. Absolutely agree. Unfortunately, yeah, but Boki, not a pick for us this year. Willie Rioli, I don't think we go there. Mackenzie, mate, any relevance or pretty easy skip, mate?
Nah, he's in there for his pressure. He'll kick a goal every couple of games and stay in. Nothing crazy.
Beautiful, mate. Asava's obviously come across as Darcy Byrne-Jones, Charlie Dixon, Ivan Soldo. Now, maybe quickly with the rucks, mate, this is something to bring up. So,
Yep.
Ivan Soldo is obviously one that's in the side at the moment. I know there was a stage during the pre-season where there was a little bit of talk, I know down here in Victoria anyway, that Sweet was possibly looking to take that number one ruck mantle for the
Yep.
short term anyway, but it certainly seems like that's not the case. Can you just confirm that maybe for people that still may have Sweet sitting at their R3 if they haven't fixed their team in a few weeks, mate?
Yeah, I think it's even worse than that in terms of a Supercoach perspective for Sweet, because I think he does play a little bit early, but I think they play them together against the Max Gorns and the other bigger ruckmen of the
Okay.
comp. So something that I didn't expect, and as you can see by the list here, we're not going to talk about Finlayson because he's kind of out of favour. So Finlayson's not in a lot of our projected best 22s when the Port fans gather together and chat about it. So we need a backup ruck. So Ollie Lord is probably going to be one that starts the year and plays those backup ruck minutes, because we don't want to put Dixon through it. He's a bit aging, his body can't really take it. But what happens when we come up against dual rucks ourselves or big dogs like Gorn? I think you could see Sweet played, but as a second ruck in game, which means he's probably not going to score well still. So there is, I think, a very small chance, but I think there's a live chance that he actually drops in price before he becomes a pick. If Soldo gets injured or something down the line, then we might look at him, but not to start, I don't think.
Great advice, mate. Great advice. Because that was all the talk down here. And I remember everyone
Yeah,
started shifting there at R3. It was Como for a bit,
I
not
did
looking
too.
too great. Yeah. Well, so Naismith, maybe with Nank out, but that's another question. Do you start him and then Nank comes back after a week?
Naismith is my R2 right now, by the way. So
Wowee. That
right
is
now,
huge.
things could change. Things could change, but right now,
Oh, that is huge, mate. What a bombshell. I'm almost shocked. I love it though, mate. And I
I
tell
think
you
I'm
what,
shocked.
no, a new method to the madness, absolutely. And I know that you've got a good plan in place, but a bit of a jaw dropping moment there, mate. I need to sort of bring that back up because
Mm,
but we won't talk too much. We'll give anything away now. Make sure that you are, as we mentioned, YouTube channel, check out JB's stuff there because
yeah.
that's where you're going to get all the good goss. And I can't wait to find out about this myself. But thanks, that mate. Love that. But sold, I don't think either. Maybe in a draft if you need your ruckman there. Ali probably not. Now this bloke, Jace Burgoyne, he's an interesting pick, mate. I've seen a couple of teams floating around with him. I don't think he's been in too many. I think he's around the 2% ownership the last time that I saw anyway. But again, do you think there's any relevance to the Jace Burgoyne pick, mate? I'd love it, for Port fans, if this bloke could
Mm.
become a real player. Obviously, being a father-son, that's really what you want to see. But do you have really high hopes for him, not only as a player, but as a Supercoach option for us this year as a real pod type selection, mate?
I wish I did. And Burgoyne was in my team for a while there as well. The problem is, if you look to the right of the screen there, his disposal efficiency and clangers for a winger they're just not up to scratch. He's unfortunately on the poorer side of disposing of the footy. And even when we need him to just chuck it up to the forwards, unfortunately, he just hasn't sort of got that craft perfected yet. So as much as I put forward my best 22 and I expect him to be there, I get a lot of pushback from other Port fans, and my argument is he's all we've seen on the wing so far this preseason. Surely he's given first crack, but he just really didn't take he didn't take it and run. So even if he does start there, we could be looking at a quick switch out in a couple of weeks. And we've got Josh Sin as well, who's sort of building up fitness through the Sandful, who could come in that place as well. Not to start, not round one, but he could find himself there in the early rounds as well when he builds that fitness. So no for me on Burgoyne, unfortunately, but I would absolutely love for him to be a pick.
Beautiful, mate. Now, very quickly, and you won't see these guys, I don't think, feature on the screen, but there's a couple of other blokes that have been mooted to float through that wing. You mentioned one of them in Josh Sin, and the other bloke was Cleary. Do you think that, well, when Josh Sin is ready, fit, and available, actually, very quick question. Is he got an issue at the moment, mate? Is he been dealing with something and or is he just not in the best 22 currently or 23?
A little bit of both. So, because it's his first preseason, he's just getting managed through. So, I think he played the last 2 quarters of the 6 quarter. It's not quarters if it's 6 of them, but you know what I mean. The first practice match he played the last couple of quarters, and then this most recent one he obviously didn't play at all. But he played, I think, half of the Sandful one, and then they've said that he'll sort of get eased in through the Sandful. So will Georgiadis. They're on a similar program where they've been injured all last season, and they're sort of just getting brought through the SANFL. So no current issue at the moment, but just building that fitness block up, taking our time with them. We don't need to rush those lads in. So I assume both Gio and Sin will be in the best 22. I think you're probably looking at it in the first or around the first month of the season, probably.
Beautiful, mate. Fantastic. And Cleary, nothing there, mate. No discussion really needed with Cleary, just skipping other options.
He did put together some good performances on the wing, but he's just not a winger, and he's not a good enough defender either. So unfortunately, he's just in a bit of no man's land. I think we said to him as well at the end of last season, if you can find a home, we're happy to accommodate, a move for you. Okay. We're happy to have you here as a backup as well, but it's one of those situations where we sort of just, I think the same as Riley Bonner, we sort of just said, if you can find a home, we're happy to accommodate that. So obviously not a lot of suitors out there. I hope he gets it together, but I don't think he's going to feature much this year.
Beautiful, mate. And maybe just quickly, as a bit of a bonus, you just talked Riley Bonner there. Now, obviously at the Saints, talk about, relevant discussion. I've seen him in a few teams, and last night I was lucky to go to the Supercoach official launch, and I was talking with the Godfather, and I'll tell you what he was trying to sell me. He was trying to sell me this, man. He's saying now he's going to be D3 by the end of the year. Big call from the Godfather, mate, but the ears pricked up.
Wow.
Have you got any sort of an opinion on Riley Bonner, particularly, look, given the fact he's only a midfielder this year, mate, around the 280 mark? What do you think about him, mate? Any thoughts?
I think I don't want to talk negatively on Riley Bonner because I love our past players. I actually really, if you remember back, this is probably going back 4 seasons, maybe even more, maybe 5 or 6 seasons, when Riley Bonner he debuted the season prior, and he was coming in at about 180k as a defender, and Phantom and I were huge on him. Like, being 2 South Aussies, we were like, we've seen this guy play pretty closely. He's going to be a prodigy in this game. So I have all the love for Bonner, but I just don't think he's up to scratch. And it's pretty fitting when a club who has an absolute lack of wingers is telling a winger to go and sort of test out his options elsewhere. So I think that's pretty fitting. I think it's also a bit trappy that the preseason is so open and so uncontested, because he is so uncontested as a player. If there's a player within 5 meters of him, it's unlikely he's winning that ball, even if he's ahead. And there's no knock on him, but that's just the way he plays the game.
Yeah.
He plays like a Ferrari. He doesn't want to get any scratches or dents. He just goes out, and he's got a great kick on him. But someone's got to get him that ball, and there can't just be easy ones behind the back all game, every game. So I don't have any belief in Bonner even making the required money from 250k. He hasn't gone into my team at all. But I mean, with all the kickouts, if they give him a great role, Sinclair's back pretty soon. Is he going to get that? Yeah. I don't know, but he hasn't gone near my team, so not for me in the nicest possible way.
Yeah, no, love it, mate. Very well said as well, mate. No, I'm the same. You always have love for those ex-players, don't you? And just genuinely wish them all the best of luck, mate. Now, when we go down the list, mate, after Jordan Sweet, who we've already talked about, Lockie Jones, you've got your Zerk Thatcher, Marshall Bergman, Ollie Lord, Evans, and Williams, who I really don't think, unless you think otherwise, mate, that they're going to be too relevant this year. Is there anyone else that we really haven't discussed that you think is worth discussing when it comes to the port list going into 2024, mate?
I don't think so. Because we touched on Sin, who wasn't active. I've spoken about Finlayson, who a lot of people thought were best 22, who we don't think is. That's for draft. I think Bergman's a fun one for draft. He was playing lockdown defender last season, and now he's playing on a wing, which I think is his better position. I think he will have some fun little spike scores there where he kicks a couple of goals in a half and also gets a couple of defensive marks. He's just a good one for the future. I think he's going to be such a jet, but I had to throw it in there because I can't not talk about Bergman. But besides that, no, I think we're pretty well covered it all.
Fantastic, mate. Well, as I said, there is no one better to come on and talk Port Adelaide. As I mentioned, mate, it has been a little bit of a dream of mine, being such a big fan of Supercoach and such a big fan of your work, and obviously all the lads and awesome people there at the Dr. Supercoach crew, mate. But it has been amazing for me. A bit of a bucket list, bang, ticked off there. Done a video with JB. So, mate, cannot thank you enough again. Can you tell us what sort of content have you got coming out, mate, on the YouTube? And I'll tell you what, just very quickly as well, if you're not in the Dr. Supercoach Slack, jump on Patreon, because it is the best community that you'll get involved with. You know, JB, Pistol and Cheese are always very active on there. You've got the Supercoach Cup type stuff, which is always a really fun initiative. So, yeah, mate, before you tell us what's actually going on, I just want to say, personally, I'm involved in the Slack, obviously, myself, but it is second to none. And the place where you want to be for the fantastic content, and often stuff that you can't get on the public scene. Get a little bit of great inside word there from all the boys. So, yeah, love the Slack, mate. But what do you got coming up, buddy?
I don't exactly know. I'm going to probably record a couple of things after we're done here tonight. I'm very appreciative to jump on as well. I'm a big fan of your content.
Thank you, mate.
As well. So I think you're killing it. You're dominating the scene, which is great. In terms of myself, I'm really open. I think I'm going to do a couple more fun teams. Maybe a lot of people are adopting the AFL fantasy take on this year's Supercoach. I'll make an entirely value-based team, just run that throughout the season. I got to do an update on I made a team in January that I said, because everyone always gets in their head about selections and talks himself out of picks. I'm going to lock in a starting team in January and see how that goes. So I'm going to do an update on that one as well. That's just a bit of fun and a lot of round zero stuff. I think we're just ready to jump into a few more podcasts and that as a group and just talk about footy. Footy's here. I can't believe it's so close, but it's here. So yeah, we're excited to just dive in. And we also have we have Pig Mentality as well as our fourth new member as well, who will be taking over a lot of the podcasting. So big ups to him.
So you are absolutely right. So make sure that you check out the great man on Twitter. There's a reason, I think, why he's joined the Dr. Supercoach team. I think the number one thing is that you've got to be a great bloke, and the Big Pig is certainly one of those blokes, and great info as well, great type of personality. So no offense, Pig, you are a legend, mate. We got to call them the Awesome Foursome now, I think, instead of the
Let's go with it. Let's go with it.
Yeah, you blokes are elite. So, mate, thank you very much from a personal point of view as well. It was an absolute honour and a pleasure for having you on. Thanks for that inside word and all the great goss on Port. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in again. Make sure that you check out that Slack, as I mentioned. I'll put all the description and all the details that you need for that down below in the video. Make sure that you do check out the Dr. Supercoach YouTube channel as well. As we said, 1.999, whatever it is, K. Yeah. Let's get that to 2K really quickly and then skyrocket that up maybe to 5 where we've just got to now. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Good to chat with the JV, and I look forward to the next one. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.